the topic here is about platforms and how platforms can build it. Right now, let's think about it from a definition perspective. You are thinking always of banking with some branches, some concepts like that, that you have regional offices, you have this, you have that. Now, in the new ecosystem, when you look at it, you are already saying my branches, my people. Now you're saying third-party guys selling my products and me selling somebody else's product, or me creating a new ecosystem where I build my own product, build somebody else's product, and maybe third party is actually selling it off, right? These ecosystem where Google is selling payment products of the customer for the banks is very eminent, right? We are seeing it all the time. Obviously, in some areas, APIs or platforms, as we call, have become very intense, right? We have seen on payment side. I keep talking about maybe the same thing has to be done by maybe we need a National Lending Corporation of India, which does the same thing for, let's say, PL or for any kind of other lending. Why only payments being so critical? Can we have on UPI, can we have lending, right? Why not lending on UPI? You can put frameworks like that. MF is all about APIs, right? So we start with a quick discussion on what exactly is the platforms people are looking at, and then we'll get into the maybe the what we can learn from other places, what we can teach the world, and maybe few challenges when we build these kind of platforms within the country, right? So we start with maybe Deepak, from your perspective, how do you see platforms playing out, and your perspective on quickly how we can evolve from here?
So I think while platform is something which is much talked about now, but if you look at it for a very long time, I think this was around, just that it has got repurposed and it has just got different dimensions. Earlier, there was a time we used to even call core banking as a platform, right? So then we started calling mobile banking platform, net banking platform, then we moved to omni-channel platform. So I think platforms in one way or other enabled you to orchestrate different services or different APIs or product processes through a common layer, and you could expose it. What has changed fundamentally now is from captive platforms, which were more for internal use, we have moved more to now the market-facing platforms. Great. Which are more collaborative, co-creative, or more open for access to different market makers and participants. I think wonderful example started with what NPCI created and led with likes of UPI and Bharat Bill Pay. But coming back to the way banks are looking at it and how we see this changing in our context is, while for a long we were working closely with fintechs, and a lot of banks do that, you often found there was a challenge between what you expect and what you require and what each of those fintechs they have. So last year when we launched our open banking platform, it was more to make sure that be it enterprise, be it developers, be it fintechs, they understand the set of APIs, protocols, access, how do you come into our system, how do you co-create, how do you get access to the sandbox. And in last about 7 months, even though officially we launched it only 2 months back, but this was unofficially live for 7 months, we could onboard over 100 fintechs who are already co-creating and building products for us with our protocol. And around that, now we are reimagining the whole future of mobility. Mm-hmm. Because you have, say, a voice sitting somewhere, chat sitting somewhere, you have your social messaging sitting somewhere else, your mobile app is sitting somewhere. How do you start? And then within app, like as we integrated, say, Ola now, which we are going live in our app. So you can book a Ola ride. Now, I don't own that journey. Somebody has to go and build that journey. But it has to integrate with the bank in terms of the payment protocols, how will the handshake happen, how the transaction will happen. Or like when we offer today a IRCTC or probably a Go IBIBO through our app. Each of these are non-banking products manufactured somewhere else.
And so in a sense, you're using their APIs or platforms for building that, right?
Not just building, but making sure that there is a standard protocol so that anything that they change, say on their side, I don't have to go back and recode everything all over again. So I think the platform is helping banks collaborate much faster, move beyond their core domain of banking, and start becoming more intrinsic to customers' daily need. Similarly for corporates, today more than 100 corporates, where we'd say that don't come to our net banking or a mobile app, even though we have a mobile app. We will give you banking as a service which is integrated with your ERP systems. So within your own corporate premises, you can view payment, you can transact. And I think this is how I would say that close to 70% of transactions in next 3 to 5 years will start originating from the non-banking areas. Banks will process it, but the origination will not happen from the banking side.
Agreed. Okay, thanks. I think interesting perspective, and obviously Kotak has been doing extremely well on the digital side. Now, but we also know that SBI is not lagging behind at all. I think everybody talks about SBI doing so much of innovation on all sides. Branch have been reimagined, and also the channels have been reimagined. Now Yono obviously has been making a lot of waves in the market. So from a Yono perspective and your views on platforms will be great for us to learn from.
Good afternoon. Actually, from State Bank of India, we look this platform. See, if you see the government of India, which has provided a number of common building blocks. Any fintech innovation or any innovation cannot happen in isolation. The entire ecosystem has to come together to create an ecosystem. Like he has just given an example of Ola integrating with the DCB Bank. It would have been not possible if there is no collaboration. So fundamentally we believe that whether we talk of India Stack, we talk of GEM portal, we talk of UPI, we talk of trades, GST. There are n numbers of platforms which has already been provided, which are open, available to all. Now this can be used both for the financial fintechs also and both for the banks also. I cannot disagree with you that banks are becoming a fintech. What exactly is a fintech? Either I bring some increase digital journey of my customer, make it more friendly, or I make some cost optimization. That's the two fundamental we look at the fintech space. And one more dimension with the fintechs is removed, which is basically an aggregation model where probably I give much more better customer experience. The information dissymmetry which was available now, which was there, now it is no longer there with this aggregator. I know what I want to know. Our platform, you only need one, has been built on fundamental of that only. We have all the necessary building blocks. Based on the building blocks, we have created, if you see, please download if an SBI customer, even not SBI customer, please download. You have a marketplace and you have your journey. What a customer needs. He wants one journey. And why we did it? Let me say why we did it. I don't know whether you will ask further or no. We did it because if you see likes of Google, likes of Amazon, what they are doing? They are capturing one aspect of the life cycle of a customer, then collaborating with someone to create a to capture another life cycle of a customer. As a result of that, customer is permanently hooked to that platform. So that's the fundamental which we feel, and I think we have enough enablers as of now.
Okay, thanks. So I think while we talk about technology a lot about when we do platforms, I think bigger challenge is collaborative approach within the organization. So I will not name the banks, but what happens within the banks is that when you start working with somebody else's platform, and you have one error in the process and one fraud out there or one KYC issue, you will close the relationship. That doesn't happen when you have your own branches. When you have your own branches and one branch makes mistake, you solve that problem. But when it's partner, you destroy the partner, saying that partner is not good enough. I think there's a lot of, while we talk about tech too much, there's a need for us to be collaborative by nature and solve the problem rather than cut the arm. My belief is that, and I was talking to some people from RBL side as well. So RBL has become really good on the partnership is because the approach is collaborative by nature. They would rather solve rather than destroy the relationship. So that's an input from my side. That's how things can sort of dramatically improve. Maybe, and we have not planned for this discussion, so it will be impromptu questions to you as well, Prasanna. So I think given that the DCB is a small bank, and obviously we are competing with the best in the industry, how do you think your platform approach is sort of helping you in creating and becoming bigger than what you are?
So happy to be part of here at Technoviti, and happy to say that Samir was part of our journey. So coming back to your question, I think this is how we operate, and we operated when internet had come to our life. That was the biggest platform which has really changed the way we operate. The way internet was open, and that point in time, if somebody had thought of bring a banking on the internet in '95, you would have said it is not possible. And after 10 years, what all we'll talk about the open banking, and on top of the open banking, we are creating marketplace banking, wherein some of the veterans have said banks are not required, but banking is required. So on those aspects, we also look at how can we really leverage on this platformification. So platforms could be a development platform, or could be a business platform for our end users, consumers. So on their strategy, what we have thought of, we are a bank, we are a nimble and fast bank, and opportunity is that to be ahead of the other banks in some areas where our consumers are there. Typically, we operate for our SME consumers, almost more than 80-90% consumers are SME. So how can we leverage a banking platform for them, wherein SME sitting at one location can do all kind of a banking in a one platform? Say example, within a Tally or a Zoho, where he has to toggle between multiple screens. Can I bring on a banking platform there itself? That's a way, how do we, and coming back to your initial question, like challenges around people, process and the technology, this is what we anticipated, created these platforms to start with the creation of the ESBs, on top of that API, and bringing on that kind of an innovation platform to the startup fintechs to create actually much needed innovation. So some of the outputs are there, we'll soon launch those. So on a journey, I would say platform is really helping us and banks like us to become one of the challenging bank ahead of other banks. So at the same time, what you said about the platforms or a consolidation of various things which we have seen, the payment gateways were there. Like there were more than 10-20 payment gateways or bill payment systems. So that's how we have created the BBPs as a one platform. So as of a part of our RBI vision statement, we could see UPI, BBPS, many more other platforms are coming. That's the way strategy should be for a country. So a country which are not without any platforms like identity platform, we were having like Aadhaar platform. So most of the fintechs are leveraging on that. So that's how we want to create a platform or a kind of a regulatory sandbox platform, could be in isolation or could be in aligned with the governments, which will help co-existence or co-innovation with banking and non-banking services. That's a way to look at tomorrow's mobile banking. So which we talk about mobile banking is a niche platform, is a great platform, and on top of that we're bringing non-banking support like insurance or a mutual fund or buying, selling tickets, or innovations like Ola, which is coming on Kotak's platform. So I think bringing on a non-banking services which will keep engaging the consumer day to day on an everyday basis. That's another model which we'll see, and we are also part of that journey because we have created a robust architecture behind. So key is that create right kind of a robust architecture behind, have a right set of governance, so that this platform becomes platform for creation of another platforms. One of the good example like sharing economy. So today we operate on a client server basis or on a mobile banking or existing channels like branches and so on. But tomorrow, I'm not sure your banking will go beyond these channels. So in a nutshell, I think platforms are really helping banks like us to become a very challenging bank ahead of the other banks.
Okay. I think interesting. So we are talking about challenging bank in India, which is typically used for banks outside. So I think one of the opportunity, obviously, a lot of large banks may also have is that maybe they will build a alternative or challenging bank within the organization, maybe rebrand it the way Yono has done it, because obviously the legacy challenges will continue to haunt it. You may create a parallel stack. So I was meeting, I would not name a NBFC. NBFC is building the full stack parallel to their current entity, full stack. One of the largest entity in the country is building a full stack fintech with is parallel structure. I met the other one side of team and second side of team. One side of team was very formal, and that's why I was suited booted. And the next day I was a meeting with us, another team, which was completely in jeans and t-shirts and sitting in a different world altogether. So I think there may be need for banks to build a parallel structure. I'm not saying that wearing jeans will result in innovation, but I think wearing suits may result in not so in being innovative, right? So we think that's what the change I see. The other challenge we always have is that when we talk too much about banking becoming more like invisible, every front-end industry, let's say education or a car manufacturing or anything else or e-commerce, is going to eat into the banking business, right? So everybody, if you look at Ola, I think is opening their own NBFC. You'll see that that process to start very soon. So you'll see the fintech side is going to go away over a period of time, and it'll get merged with the original business models, which is education or which is let's say e-commerce. and this we will become more and more behind the whole structure. The team which started it all, or maybe part of the journey, was obviously MindGate. So, from your perspective, you have been one of the largest builder of platforms.
See, one thing I think one you say is that banks are going to be away. I mean, they are not there because of fintechs. No. In fact, the more the people like Ola, Uber, they are creating to us, for us, more banking platform. In fact, they are primarily a catalyst for increasing the banking behavior in a person who was not there earlier.
I agree. It's just that the benefit of that activity may not accrue to banks, may accrue to them more than us. I'm just being from a cautious perspective because they are building their own NBFC. So lending, so as a bank, you will be only left with liabilities business because that's a licensed business which is more complex to have. But the asset business will move away to these challenges because they will take away that. So you will end up lending at maybe 11, 12, 13%, and they will onward give it at higher percent. So that's all about
If we take a world example, probably this liability business, which was till now, Gandhi sir is here, which was till now a prerogative of a commercial bank, will also is going to go away.
Things will change. I agree. So I think, Guhan, from your perspective, maybe you can give a view on how you build the platforms. And again, since there's a larger panel, we'll contain 2-3 minutes each.
Hello. Thanks, Samir. The last 24 months has been a great journey. We have been collaborating with large banks like SBI, HDFC and other people in building the UPI platform and scale it up, sort of a thing. In the last 24 months, the velocity, the platform has gone for a change, and the volume, the transactions it brought is humongous. Today, NPCI UPI last month, December 2018, the total transactions are 620 million, which is 30% above the previous month. So month on month, it is becoming 30% increase. In SBI, the day we hit the 10 million successful transactions, 10 million transactions per day, within a week, we are seeing it across. It's a 10 million successful financial transactions. So the rate at which it has grown is phenomenal, basically. So this has also brought a lot of customers who has not used that mobile banking, where the social apps are already into their mobile, like Google Pay or Phone Pay or whatever the apps are there. So how they are brought into the ecosystem and the transaction volume has increased. Now the bank. So I've looked at a journey now from 3,000 TPS, how do you do as a 10,000 TPS? So the goalposts are continuously changing and a lot of transactions are coming in the ecosystem. And the ecosystem as a whole, with IPO coming up and then BVS bringing the volumes, merchant transactions last month is close to 23% of the volume. So each of these things is building the ecosystem and the platform in a big way.
Okay. Excellent. And Vikrant, from your perspective, what are the key learnings we should take? I mean, we talk about Indian ecosystem, which is copied by other ecosystems, so that's a fact. But what can we do to learn from other ecosystems, which will help us in growing faster, better, sharper?
Okay. Well, Samir, first and foremost, I think when we talk about a platform, we need to be very clear on what we are talking about. So in my view, what is the key learning that India can have from other geographies or other geographies can have from India? There are a couple of things. There was a time when you had one core banking and everyone thought that was enough.
The end of it.
The end of it. And then subsequently you found that you needed around 30 or 40 different satellite applications to support your banking activities. And now today you have the core banking people talking about giving banking as a platform. So for example, now Finacle has already come out with a banking as a platform. Now the question is, which platform is going to survive in the end? Is it going to be the bank's platform as a bank, which is offering as a platform, or the other fintechs which are trying to compete and say that, oh, we are giving you a platform? So I think what is important is, and again, it's going to be war, it's going to be survival of the fittest. So while banks possibly have a better customer faith with them, being the legacy and being there for quite some time, the fintechs are very innovative, very adaptive, and they're agile. And therefore, they can understand the customer needs and coordinate and change pretty quickly as against the banks. So from my perspective, the key learning is, rather than insisting on a particular platform, we need to ensure that we provide a framework which enables everyone in the ecosystem to thrive. Now you gave a statement about banks trying to cannibalize or trying to shave off the heads of partners. The main reason is because possibly the do's and don'ts of where where my job ends and where your job begins. If that is not clear, then you're going to have such scenarios out there. And most importantly, the customer today may want a fancy app like an Ola and Uber, but at the same time, if you ask him, are you happy to keep your money with the people you don't know? The answer probably is no. They rather would ensure that it's secured. So you see, in India, we don't have much of traction on investments happening through these platforms. Whereas in other geographies, you will see it was prominently started from the investments part and then it's moved to the banking space. Whereas here it's the other way around. And thanks to the UPI, to the NPCI, the platform, the robust platform that has been created and the enabling framework around with it, therefore we are seeing that as an adoption by outside countries and other things also. So I think that is a most important aspect. Look at the open banking in Europe for that matter. So what is important is not just the physical platform of the technological platform, it is the all jigsaw puzzles that need to be fit in. The entire framework is what we need to build up. Or look at the Singapore authority, the creation of the sandbox. So all of this is going to be quite important in days to come.
Okay. And I think with a lot of platforms comes the other risk also, right? So let's say if you latch onto a platform and everybody grows on it, I think Aadhaar is a classical case. Everybody built on everything on top of that, and you remove one thing out of it, and everybody falls down, right? So I think we need to be cautious with this whole approach. Plan B has to be there because I don't know what Plan A can do to you, right? So be aware of that. It's a risk which we all seen, right? So one change and you're dead. Anyway, so I think Shiv you've moved your role, right? So you have moved to a very different segment. Right. And from my perspective, NEC is a platform, right? Largely it's an API-based platform which can do transactions across board. Right. So how do you see NEC collaborating as a platform, and how closely we can look at that across banking, everybody else coming together to create a unique platform which can be used by everybody else for different innovations? So any answer from that perspective?
I think there is a huge opportunity for the capital markets using to partner and collaborate with the NSE. We already have a API layer. Now, how commoditized this API layer is, because this API is a very highly specialized API, because you need a special skill to integrate with it. Now I think how to make it more as a commodity layer, so it is easy to integrate, rather than learning what are the jargons of the capital markets protocols and the different attributes, how it can be made as a more customer experience oriented, and here I mean customer experience oriented means the developers of the capital market, the fintech developers of the capital market consume them in a much more simplified manner. Just like as we are giving the example of the open banking. So can we have a framework which is based on the latest technologies protocol, because a lot of legacy is also there in the capital markets, and which derives a lot of highly specialized skill set. So to bring the democratization for participation of the fintechs with capital market, especially in the investment banking areas, there are some examples already, but it can create a lot of revolution, because currently if we look, less than 5%, or I think about 2 to 3% people only do the trading in overall the total population of the country, which is the bankable population of the country. And while this percentage is very high in the West, like US has close to 30% of the population, and China has close to 12%. So to match to 10 to 12%, there is a lot of headroom, and I'm sure that can be bring this gap can be bring up very fast by having a disruptions using the very innovative fintech based frameworks as well as the front ends. And we are, I think in the coming months, we'll be working closely with a lot of such opportunities and working with the market developers to arrive at those innovative tools and clients which can disrupt the market and spur the investment banking volumes or the trade volumes to much more higher scale. Already we are processing the peak volumes we have processed last year, 2 billion trades in a day. So which goes the peak volumes go as high as 140k transactions per second. So we already are handling such excessive volumes where we are now working with a lot of chip manufacturers to go for the next generation chipset to handle close to 10 times of these volumes as well.
I think you are used to handling large volumes. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Phenomenal. So I think let's come back now. When we talk about these platforms and multiple entities getting involved in the whole process, there are always challenges of privacy, whose data it is, what kind of risk which we carry, and how do you manage it as we go forward? When you have a challenge, will you tell RBI that this was done because I partnered with this guy and blame him, or rather take ownership, right? So we've seen those issues as well. So how do you handle privacy and other regulations out there? What's your view, Deepak?
So I think it's clear the accountability lies with the bank.
Okay.
At the end of it, you cannot shy away because whatever you do, you are doing first. You have to fulfill your regulatory obligation, and I think the point you mentioned at times, banks are a little tough on partners. I fully agree. Yes, when there was the whole crypto mess. Banks had to make sure that they are fully compliant, and obviously it's not that we are against any fintech, but fintechs, obviously a lot of them operate under the radar and they get away. Banks cannot get away. So I think when we have to fulfill our regulatory obligation, we have to ensure that the customers trust, the regulators trust, the systemic trust in banking as an industry and banks is maintained. I think we have to set very, very high standards in whatever we do. And I think the challenge always for a bank is how do we balance the whole innovation and customer experience with privacy and regulation, because I think that is what makes the task much easier for people outside. And so often we hear that banks are sloppy, banks are slow to respond. It's not that. I think when you start putting a lot of constraints and then you say,
agreed,
now innovate, I think you have to be mindful of every single thing, how customer data is treated. I think banks will be very, very ferociously guarding the customer data. So even today when we talk to a lot of partners, be it cloud, I think when it's not that we all understand that cloud is a far easier way to innovate and partner. But then again, it's important to see what goes on cloud and what stays on-prem, or as we talk of hybrid cloud or multi-cloud strategy, how do you leverage your private cloud versus public? What kind of data sharing and protocol that you have between partners? How do you ensure that anything that goes wrong on the partner side does not impact the customer's trust or the service or disruption? So to that extent, even all our clauses have something what we call is we do the periodic audit on all our partners. So we will take the same level of due diligence as we do internally, be it through InfoSec, through operational risk, to go and audit each of those partners who work with us. And because at the end of it, I cannot say that my partner made some mistake. And it does happen. Let me tell you, there are quite a few issues that keeps happening. But I think this is where we all are learning and tightening things up, but still making sure that your API standards are so clear. The API manager, for example, that you bring, so where you bring in the kind of throttling, how many API calls can you make? If you find there is a certain number of hits which are abnormal, how your fraud and risk management systems, they trigger, and how do you start taking those kind of measures? So I think it's building the entire system is far, far complex. Since you are with banking, I'm sure you understand, but yeah, nevertheless, I think this is the beauty about taking this whole piece forward together.
Okay. So maybe a slightly more complex view. How do you build an organization around this platform approach, right? Because erstwhile approach of fraud management was that let's track the data and figure out how it is done, or we were doing all kind of processes, bit of manual approaches. Somebody will stamp, somebody will check. But in this platform approach, there are too many entities involved. So how do you build an organization which is light and still compliant? How do you make it happen?
See, actually, bankers are now in a, what we can say, in a state of uncertainty in terms of privacy. On the one hand, I have to guard my data. On the one hand, I have to collaborate with the platforms also, with the fintechs also to provide the best customer experience. The best way of controlling the risk is don't do business. That is the easiest and best way. But I can't do it.
Until unless you are sitting in compliance, right?
Compliance.
You will say, no, don't do it.
I don't do it. Okay, so that's the challenge bankers are now facing day in and day out. As far as the regulations are concerned, the regulators are concerned, it is the bankers who is responsible. Beyond regulation, ultimately the relationship between the bank and its customer is of trust. The moment I share the data, knowingly, unknowingly, my trust is lost. If I lost the customer, the entire banking, my IP has lost. So how do you are managing? That's a fundamental question. And as a bank, we are also continuously soul searching ourselves how to do it, how to manage the fraud, how to manage this. We had certain systems of fraud management, but with the change in the digital behavior, with the change in the more open APIs, we are building it much more robust fraud management systems, which was on a periodic basis to an online basis to on a real-time basis. Audits, like, I just told that about the periodic audits are there. There are 2-3 approaches we are making. First, right, people say that we are very slow to react, we take a lot of time, but I think as a bank where I am the repository of my customer data, I need to satisfy myself that the data which the other party wants is in a right form, is the needed data. Is a data needed for the business or just for the hack of data? This is one. Second, how on a real-time data based on various new mechanisms, where is AI, where it is a machine learning, whatever various forms of innovations, I am able to mitigate the risk, control the risk at the right moment. So these two fundamentals, we are continuously building our risk data. In fact, in State Bank of India, we are giving much more stress on our ISD, Information Security Department, that probably on the business. So we have created an compliance culture in terms of information security as a separate vertical in order to give much more focus to the area of this. So that is how we are going to tackling. It is continuously evolving. Day in and day out, we are fighting it out. That's the reality.
Okay. Interesting. So I repeat, it's all unprepped. So the kind of questions I'm asking is like random, right? So quick question to you. Now that the platforms are all linked to regulations and support from environment, right? So what would be your expectation from a government side? What can they do? They have given us GST. They have given us Aadhaar, taken back Aadhaar, given us platforms on UPI. A lot of stuff has been done. We have been innovating just on that, right? So what can they can give so that the environment becomes better? And at the end, the innovation is not for us. Actually, not for those sitting out here. They're all in villages, all in towns, all in cities who are actually the real consumers. They ought to get services at cheaper, better, faster rate. So what can the government do for us?
I think in a nutshell, I think it's a very big question, what government should do it. But as an individual, I will say my personal opinion is what government should do it. And government is already doing it. If I ask which is the biggest startup in India, is like Government of India. The way they operate in last 2-3 years. Typically after RuPay being launched, and on top of that we are seeing whatever they have mentioned in RBI vision statement way back in 2013, they have delivered it within a time, by 2017. So now looking at what's the things are happening, like Aadhaar was there, which was like a boost for all the fintech community as well as for banks or telecoms. We have seen the onboarding of customers. Once we onboard the customer, how do we serve that customers? Wherein a lot of business models which we have seen and keep on engaging these customers. But when Aadhaar is not there, this is what we have seen ki how these fintechs are bleeding out of that. So I think in a nutshell, what strategy we should have as in a country, that we should have a very good platforms. We should have to have a very good digital identity as a part of a country's motivation. The way we have a NPCI, which is an entity which takes care of the payments initiatives to reach out the payments to the last mile as a part of a financial inclusion to last mile, say every villagers out there in Bharat, we say. And at the same time, government is working on some of those projects like BharatNet, so that bandwidth or internet also has to be reached there. It's not only that mobility is coming, or but the 70% of our consumers are using feature phones. To bring on right set of innovations, it's a very big opportunity like country like India. So I would say the way we have a cyber security or a defense minister on the territory of a physical security, similarly we are bringing on some kind of a communities around cyber security. Why not fintech minister, the way we have a fintech minister at Singapore or something, who is really have a KRA to bring on right set of regulatory sandbox, which is really needed for a fintech companies or a startup communities, because we operate in a silos. What we have seen in silos, AP government is doing massively good, or Maharashtra government is massively doing good. But at the center, we always see some recommendation or some talks is going on. But moreover, when we say we have this Aadhaar decision, which has really not helping most of our business models, we need to have these kind of ecosystems. But good part, I think we are on that journey. We have seen massive landscape changing ecosystems like UPI or BBPS, GST, even Aadhaar. And other countries are following, are asking how it is being really implemented. Other countries, UK and FCA has implemented the regulatory sandbox, which was outcome of some of the very good input from the Indian mentors. So I think we have to have a concentration, and this should be the agenda of Indian government. And all the stakeholders should be involved. The stakeholders like academias, it should start from the schools. If you really want to bring on a startup culture or something to do the emerging technology, it has to be incorporated into engineering or this kind of course. It's also happening. But the way I have studied my engineering, the same curriculum is also available now. So there has to be some change at academia. That's one pillar. There has to be some another pillar like corporate companies also be part of this. That's also happening. So I will say things are happening, but there has to be more concentration from top. We have seen the output during demonetization, although there are buts and a lot of other sides. But we have seen that country has come together around financial inclusion, how more and more people should come on the mobility. But when you interview the villagers, there is a different view they will give on. We may talk about UPI and mobility and many more platforms now here, but when you go and talk to them, they hardly know what is this all about. So I think awareness is another aspect which we have to bring on, and that is also government is doing, but it has to be in a more rigorous basis. Government has done digital melas and all in the bigger cities. It has to go to the down cities, and there is another department which is serving that. But I think if you bring on at a cabinet minister, that's again a personal view, to a right officer or a department which is concentrating with the various state governments around fintechs and around startups to have a single policy and a single agenda of the country, then we will become a template for other countries rather than a small country like Estonia has become template for blockchain, or Singapore is becoming a template for how to adapt a startup or a fintechs. So again, these are all my personal views.
So
Sameer,
काफी recommendations there. Okay, lots of them.
Sameer, I have one input on this. Actually, as you're talking about, Aadhaar. So Aadhaar became a single point of failure. So which is like all the eKYC failed, all fintechs, started scrambling for the survival. So I think we must have to the driver's license and the passport needs to be digitized, and it should be all centralized. Passport we have. I think all the RTOs need to be integrated. Using Sarthi program, we already have that integration. But now those services need to be made for eKYC, so that digital eKYC can be done for using a driver's license, because everybody may not like to give his biometric. But we shall be able to establish the verification of the driver's license using the electronic APIs. And same with the passport, like other countries have done. So we need to involve the similar initiative we had to take, just like once upon a time, the government has taken and involved very large security services vendor to set up the Aadhaar as an identity infrastructure. Similarly, for now, we need to get lot of very large security companies, vendors are there who can enable, which are working with various other Western countries like US and France and Europe. They can enable, they can digitize these two artifacts, and they will be the alternatives, because not everybody in future may go for Aadhaar, because
Agreed.
people may not like to give their identity theft happening because of various doubts. Maybe Aadhaar is most robust infrastructure, but still I may have a doubt. There will be certain people who will have reservations. So we should be enabling them still to go for these digital services. And I think that is the one, I think we need to work with the government, where these two documents go for the digital verification remotely, anytime, any place, using the mobile. I can onboard the customer using driving license.
One small view, like how many people have a driving license, right? I'm not countering, but we need to have that kind of an ecosystem identity come from birth. When there has to be some identity, because I don't know like how many people have a driving license or how many people have a election card. It comes after 18 years, right? What to do for the rest of the consumers? So that's the one way to look at it.
For rest of the
But I
consumers
think
is
that's
Aadhaar.
yeah.
For rest of the consumer is Aadhaar.
I think that's what has become Niradhar, right? So, kya karenge? So, anyway, I think question from you, from since you have built a platform, and many of us will intend to build a platform in future. What does it take to build a future? I mean, since we are running short of time, a quick response on it, because many of guys will look at you as a role model and build a company around like that, like you, right? The way you have created. So, what does it take to sort of build a platform company, right? Because you are not a fintech, you are not into any of these jazzy
Yeah.
stuff. You are actually doing only platforms.
Yeah, we are creating platform on collaborating with the large banks and the medium-sized banks, which are very responsive in nature. So initially, many of the things started off like a solutions and then address a specific problem and need sort of a thing. As the ecosystem has come up, the UPI, BBBS, all those things has given a lot of faith in the ecosystem. And most of the times, India has been seen as more of a followers, especially UPI and BBBS has given a big global address.
Agreed.
Because payment has been a simple phenomena throughout the world, but collection was a very difficult. So UPI gave the first collect proposition where the corporate or the merchants collect efficiently. So as a fintech partner, this gave a wide opportunity to prove our skills, and then the battlefield has become a very level playing. Whoever is able to scale up, perform. Today, when we say a 3000 TPS or a 10,000 TPS, we are pretty confident how we are able to scale it across. So it's a responsiveness that matters a lot in the changing thing. So that's what has helped us to scale up across markets, India, Middle East and Singapore sort of a thing. In fact, when you work with Singapore and Middle East markets, they all are very stunned the way the UPI has been designed or architected and the scale it has achieved across. That's a thing for partners like us.
Excellent. So, Vikrant, since this is all about platform approach is all about digital transformation. So, when you work with banks or NBFC or others, what will your advice to build a platform approach in the organization? How do you advise? What kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, basically, the first thing, it all has to start with the mindset of the top management. That is very important. And
That's not very important, right? The top line is revenues. I met somebody a few days back. He says, this is the last quarter. We will not do any work on digital side. We will only focus on top numbers, right? So it's urgent versus important.
Well, I think it's the mindset of the urgent and important. So if the management knows what is important, it may not get into the urgent syndrome. So that is the first thing. So they need to be adaptable, they need to be flexible, and they need to be responsive. Having said that, what is most important is we are existing for business. So what is their business model going to be is something that they need to define. I'll give you a small example. Now, a lot is being talked about platforms. Now, I'm working very closely with the subsidiary of NSE IT, who are actually churning data. Now, in few of the bank's data, what we found was there is an avalanche of data, and there's a lot of insight which the bank themselves would have, which is not being looked into. And it is not the demographics data. It is not about whether it's a he or a she, or whether it's a minor or a major, or what is his age. The demographics is not part of it. But even if you look at the transactions of the particular person of a particular account, you get enormous insights into it. So I think the business model that you need to build is more important. Second important aspect is, while the onus of the customer data confidentiality lies on the institutions, they also need to understand that are they being a bit too overwhelmed about the entire scenario, or is it something that they are happy to let go and strike a balance between the customer convenience, the business model they are creating, and the regulatory comfort that also needs to be built up. And having said that, I'll just give you a small example. When we talk about the ecosystems and things, we also need to understand the reality of what's available today. Now, having built the payments platform, everybody would want to say, oh, now with GST, getting real-time signals for or early warning signals for my asset book, whether it's an MSME, corporate or whatever, should be easy. But the matter of fact remains that even the state government does not know what is the overall GST and collection of the entire country, or what is their share in the GSTN.
Agreed.
If this is not available to the GST department themselves, we are still far away from getting into an API where you would be able to check out and understand and have that as a resource or a connector for the big data to get early warning systems for your NPA. Because today, of course, most of the banks and NBFCs are grappling with the issues of their basic survival rather than think of innovation. And that is I think the most important aspect, being the strategizing part of it is something that they need to be very clear on. Other things can definitely be built up.
Okay. Is anybody give me signals that time is over? Nobody's, right? So maybe one or two questions can we take? Okay, nobody's responding. So you can ask maybe a couple of one or two questions and then we'll respond. Yeah. Any questions? I know that, but nobody's giving me comments that you have to get off, right? Any questions from the group here?
Hello. Yeah, my name is Mani. The question is for Deepak. You were suggesting that you are encouraging your customers to go away from your own mobile and net banking to probably their own net banking. I mean, I'm thinking that you're probably having an open API and asking your customers to build their own front end. Is that the way, or how are you doing this, encouraging your customers?
No, we are not asking them to build any new proprietary channel. Let me clarify. What we are saying is, as we start looking at bank as a service, you have to ensure that whatever is a banking service that's required to be provided, you provide it where customer is going to consume it. For example, today when you go on to any shopping site and you see a payment gateway or a checkout page, finally that's nothing but that's payment as a service that's provided through an aggregator where you are finally buying a merchandise. Similarly, if you are a large corporate and if you are running your SAP or you are running any of the other ERP solutions where you probably see all other data and now you want to do any kind of recon, say between your bank statement and your accounting statement, or you want to make a payment, or similarly if you are using a Tally or like some of the other accounting software. Now you have to always keep reconciling between all the entries which is showing in your bank statement and what is there on your accounting. Now that itself becomes a tedious exercise at times. Now the whole idea here is, if we provide both the payment, recon and your transaction, you want to upload say the payment files, for that today you have to separately come and we have to give you either a CMS access or you have to access some of the other systems. Now as you make all the core system API enabled, it's much easier for you or for us to plug that service in for trusted entities. So it's not that it's available to anyone, but then you decide depending on the kind of entities and the relationship and what kind of access and control that they have put in place about who is a maker, who is the authorizer, who has access control. And then accordingly we set those up in our system, but they can access it from their system, just like you probably can access your email when you are not in office, right? So,
okay. One last question.
Okay. So, thank you for a lot of inputs, Prasanna. So, you talked about a lot of stuff, good stuff. So, a lot of takeaways for comment from that angle. So, this is a fact that fintech sector is there. There are a lot of people who are doing a lot of good innovation. But as a country, I think we have taken a very convenient stand that we like it, we take it, and the moment when we see some problem, then we chuck them off, and then many times the sector becomes little like orphan, and they just don't know where to go and where to cry and who will actually wipe the tears. So in that line, there is some news, I think in the month of December, where the CICs, they have been sharing the customer data with the fintech sector. I believe there was some hue and cry about that, and there was some discussion between IBA and fintechs. I'm not sure where it has gone, but when I actually looked at that news, I was actually little skeptical that if that comes through, that the CICs should not share the customer data, the score and then the information with fintechs, then probably everyone who is there in the lending sector will have to think of what to do next. So is that right? I mean, I won't put any finger. This question is for no one. But any comment, and why would bank really take that kind of a stand? The moment when they see that okay, it could be a competition, then let's use our position to turn it around.
So I'll just give my 2 bits. Now I'm not speaking on behalf of any association here, but today a lot of companies, and I'm not talking of banks. I mean, today you look at a lot of non-banks, right? Be it a Google Pay or a WhatsApp or Paytm, they are investing a lot of money in terms of promotions, cashbacks, incentive to get user and get user data. So there is an investment going on to generate data. Now, if you just see to it not from a bank or credit card bureaus, if you just make sure that the data is democratized, that means the data is available now to anyone, whether you pay for the data, you invested in creating the data. That's the enterprise view of this whole debate. The second view, which is what Shri Krishna committee said, who owns the data is the customer who owns the data. And this is the premise on which the whole consent management and account aggregation architecture is getting built. So I'm saying there are different views right now. One has to figure out what's right at the end of it for customer, for innovation, and for the industry. And I think a lot of firms today, they guard their data as their proprietary data. Come to think of it, if every data becomes democratized in a manner, then people will start saying, is there a business model for us to pay to get data? So I think that's a more bigger debate than just a very tactical on this particular point. That's my 2 bits.
Will change it, right?
I think my view is, and I can say anything because I'm not a part of any bank, right? So I think my counterpoint will be, it's like this. We today talk about banks opening up their platforms as APIs, and everybody has to open APIs, balances, transactions. How many other industries are willing to do it? I don't think we see any of the large providers sending their whole data back to the customers and say you can give it to anyone. They don't provide. There's no unified APIs from e-commerce. Do you see a unified or maybe even Ola, Uber, do they give APIs back anybody can consume? No, not really. So I think the point is that why one industry is opening up, is it self-destructing? It is also an issue, right? Why would we give all the data to other side? The other side is not giving back. So it's a counterpoint. You think that somebody is asking this question, valid question. The reverse has to be asked, why only banks and NBFC open their world, not other side, right? So I think that's a question which we have to ask them, right, as well, right? So it's not always this side is wrong.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can close. I guess you are now pushing hard. So I think one input from my perspective is that earlier we always used to talk about I have 200 branches, 2,000 branches, 20,000 branches. I think the game is you have 100 partners, 200 partners, 2,000 partners. Do you have APIs for it? Do you have product managers for it? I mean, you will need product managers to run APIs. APIs is not technology, it's business, right? So you need new roles, new processes, new approaches, and tons of partners to run that, right? I think that definition has changed dramatically. I think we all are figuring out that problem is very complex to handle. With this, thank you. This is one of the best panels I've seen, powerful and knows what it is, right? So thank you guys.